My name is Dan Diggory, and I'm president of Singers in Accord Choral Ensemble. And on behalf of our entire organization, I want to welcome all of you to this webinar tonight. We've got this great panel of experts and people who have important insights into this topic of diversity, equity, access, inclusion, and belonging. We'll start just a couple of announcements. Singers in Accord just finished a wonderful project with Nancy Grundall as both the composer and conductor of a piece that she wrote for the project called Toward Justice. And I'm pleased to announce that recording will be released sometime in the next week or two on YouTube, and we'll be sure that the word gets out on that. If you wish to support Singers in Accord, please visit our website, and you'll find a link on there in which you can make your support. We appreciate that. And now I'm going to turn the webinar over to the Singers in Accord artistic team leader, Jan LeClaire. Jan?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. First, a little bit of tech support from Dan. Phillip registered, but isn't sure that, oh, hi, Phillip. And hopefully you can unmute yourself. Welcome to everyone. In early March, I'll try not to speak too long because our guests are the main attraction tonight, obviously. But in early March, I was struck when attending the Chorus America conversations. And we'll claim him as a Minnesotan, Tesla Wanamagnew. His keynote address really resonated. His powerful and passionate challenge to us to examine a broken social contract, to listen, especially for voices previously silenced or underrepresented. And we are so thrilled and gracious that we have three such wonderful friends, resolute, determined, expert voices to whom to listen this evening. I'm just going to do a quick summary of our relationship to these three fabulous folks, and then I'm going to get out of the way and listen and learn. First, I think many of us are here in grief and in longing between the pandemic and the killings of George Floyd and Dante Wright. We are reeling and in many ways broken. And again, these three positive, proactive people will be of great solace to us this evening. I'm going to go backwards in time for no good reason. We worked with Ahmed Anzaldua in April of 2019, and we're thrilled to be able to feature Oceana by Golhoff. Ahmed is well known in our community. His group Border Crossing is dedicated to integrating what's been historically segregated musicians and repertoire and audiences. And he's also one of the co-editors of the Justice Choir Songbook, the founder of Heritage Choir, and is the director of music ministries at Unity Church Unitarian. And his family, we are lucky to have his family live in our community. Welcome, Ahmed. Angie Kasper, we worked with Angie twice, most recently in November 2017, and we presented a large and rich collaboration. It was entitled Global Windows, How the World Sings. And Angie pulled together groups as varied as the Minnesota Korean Women's Choir, the Mila Vocal Ensemble, the Cameroon Choir, and Singers in Accord to do underrepresented music from around the globe. Angie currently is in charge of choral music and especially choral music methods for future music educators at Western Washington University. That followed at Angie's 20 years at the University of St. Thomas, training and inspiring a whole generation of music educators. And I'm guessing that we have lots of Angie fans who are tuning in tonight to see her. Following Angie at St. Thomas is Phillip Shoultz. Phillip, at St. Thomas, he's working in the master's program, I believe, of choral conducting. Phillip is the associate conductor of vocal lessons. He's the director of learning and engagement for vocal lessons. He's the founding conductor of Vocal Essence, Singers of This Age. And I'm really anxious to hear more about your dynamic youth. And many of us enjoy a shot of positivity and learning in the morning when Phillip does his Take 5 with GPS. So grateful to all of you for being here this evening. On Phillip's bio of the vocal lessons on the vocal lessons site, it talks about how expanding boundaries and creating wider access to the choral arts is one of Phillip's passions. And when I pushed out our working title for tonight, with the access being the A of the ADEIB acronym, I thought that might be a place to start, especially because Phillip was thoughtful enough to say, yes, that is a working title, but some of those terms mean disparate things. So Phillip, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to get out of the way, and if you could perhaps introduce what you might think of as a place to start in that vocabulary, and perhaps if there's a term that's less well understood in your opinion, that would be great. Thanks again, everybody, for being here.
Thank you, Jan, and Singers in Accord team for your wonderful work in this way and for this invitation. And it's lovely to be here with the double A's, the A team, with Ahmed and Angie. And as you mentioned, I'm grateful to Angie for saying to the people at St. Thomas, you should talk to Phillip, because I would never have considered myself for that role. And it's thanks to her gracious support that I get to do some wonderful work there. So we're grateful to be with everyone tonight. Thanks for making time. And I appreciated the way Jan opened the meeting also tonight, and want to just share that space with everyone. There's no secret, the sign behind me, and we all are grieving our loss of Black lives in our Asian American and Pacific Islander communities as well. And some of the work that I'm doing right now is with people who are bodies of culture around the country, gathering with Resma Minikin and others each month to learn more about somatic abolitionism and just the ways that our bodies get in the way when we have these conversations. And I want to offer something to everyone in this space right now, especially those of you who aren't on the screen. You're hidden, so this works well for you, to just let your body speak to you and acknowledge what your body is saying in this conversation. I encourage you tonight to take a notepad and scribe. Take notes on when you notice your heart starts to beat faster, when you feel pressure in your chest, maybe when you feel like you want to escape because something gets too close to home, and name that and know that that's okay. You are okay no matter how you show up in this space tonight. And look over your right shoulder for a moment and physically do this with me. And look over your left shoulder, and then look out in front of you, both sides in front of your screen, and find those exit places. And if something gets too deep tonight and you need to exit for a moment and then come back and join the conversation, that's okay. I don't know where we're gonna go, but we might touch a trigger spot, and just acknowledge in the place what your body's feeling, take a note of it and come back to it. Access, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, justice. The acronym gets longer and longer. And the thing about the acronym is that we get stuck with the buzzwords because we're a buzzword society. And those of us who work in nonprofits or spaces where There are foundations and individuals supporting the work that we do. Those of us in school communities, on committees, talking about DEI and talking about this work, doing the work. In fact, that's what it's been called now, another buzzword, doing the work. I feel that we get caught up in right and wrong rather than just sitting with what we're actually trying to say and what meaning we're trying to make. And so I want to take a very brief moment and then invite my colleagues to jump in here, and we can kind of kick the conversation off just to give us a framework for how to consider these terms, knowing that there are many ways to see them. So I am going to share my screen for just a moment here, because I think that'll provide some help for us all. If we just start from here and clarify this language. And let's start first with diversity, which I think is the most misunderstood of the lot, because diversity is simply the people count, or counting the people in one level. Diversity are these measurable and observable ways that we count people, that we count statistics. But we know that that one measure of diversity is not necessarily enough of a difference to make a difference. And we get caught up in trying to diversify what we see, the look. And what happens there is we often ignore other dimensions of human difference that do make up our diversity. So yes, measurable, observable things are part of diversity. Phillip has darker melanin. He has black curly hair. You know, those things are measurable and observable. We need to note those. But it's these other internal things about our existence and our identity that we don't often see on the surface that are the ways that we differ, that we have to factor into diversity. It's our organizational view and our worldview, the context that we bring to our interactions that makes up diversity. And that's where we get stuck sometimes, is not thinking about the whole package. So I want to affirm that diversity are all the dimensions of human difference, all the ways we differ, seen and unseen, that make up that term. Equity is everyone getting what they need to be successful. And to do that, the outcomes matter. So we have to address disparities and we have to ameliorate them. We have to get rid of the disparities. We often get caught in that equity equality thing. And I often say the way to get equity is to treat everyone differently. So in the choirs that I lead, we have a code of conduct, we have rules and regulations, but each person gets one-on-one interaction with what they need to help them be successful in that moment, which might not be seen as equal because it's not. It might not be seen as fair, but it is equitable. And that's a tricky spot, I think, for us to lean into. Inclusion is the one that really means a lot to me because it's the buzziest of the buzzwords. To me, inclusion and belonging are synonymous. For me, when I say inclusion, I'm looking to, can we create a space where people belong, where they know that they aren't just invited, they aren't just welcomed, but this is their space. They can take off their shoes, put their feet on the table. So we're embracing the difference and the people count. Diversity, we count the people, but inclusion, belonging, the people count. This is their space. And then the final one that I have the slide for is access, because I think access is the trigger. And after I talk about this one, I'll kick it over to you, Angie, that maybe talk about the work that you're doing now at Western Washington. Access is all about, you know, who's in and who's out, as Heidi Klum would have said, right? You know, identifying the barriers and looking at the who and the why. If we remove barriers to participation, we create access. I like to think of it backwards now that I've laid it out, DEIA. When you start with identifying the barriers and articulating those and start to remove those, then you can get to the inclusion where people belong. Then you can create an equitable space where we truly have diversity. So that's kind of how I see those terms to kind of give us some grounding. And with that, I'll stop the boring screen share. We'll get back to the faces and kick it to you, Angie.
Wow,
Thanks.
Philip, I'm just going to jump in front of Angie. Sorry, Angie, just to remind people who are here to please feel free to use the chat function, and we'll try to keep track of questions for these fabulous folks. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Philip, for that introduction. So helpful to our discussion. And I wanted to say to you that I couldn't be more thrilled that the master's degree at the University of St. Thomas, that those students are under your care and tutelage. So thank you for that. And great to be back amongst singers and accord friends and my friend Ahmed. So as many of you know, I moved to Washington State. I'm teaching at Western Washington University. It's a school of about 14,000 students in the very corner of the country. Students pay $9,000 a year in tuition, room, and board. So our school is made up primarily of first-generation students. We have about 40% members of the BIPOC community. We have 35% of our students that identify as part of the LGBTQ community. We have administration and faculty that have our eyes open and are working toward the issues surrounding this seminar this evening all the time. It is our priority. And yet, we are part of that lineage, that system of university and college music departments, that though they may espouse these ideas, they have traditions and policies that reflect an education of the past that came directly from Western Europe. So I wanted to just share quickly the initiatives in our music department at our school. Some things that I'm just so very excited about. We have within the music department now, I'm only speaking from the music department this evening, we have a new restructure and transform task force within the music department. The mission statement is the WWU Music Department Restructure and Transform Task Force is committed to a community-informed examination of our department's culture, curriculum, and teaching practices with the intent to transform systems dominated by European white male cisgender voices in favor of meaningful approaches that include, amplify, and celebrate a range of perspectives representative of our broader community, our nation, and our world. Our first work was to develop a structure document that would guide how we were going to progress. And we have structured our work in the following way. We have an RTTF main committee. It's the committee that I serve on that includes 5 faculty members, a staff member, 2 students, and 2 alumni. We feel it's really important to look at all of these perspectives as we move forward with this work. From that main committee are smaller subcommittees that are looking at the following areas: dialogue and communication, finance, curriculum, recruitment and retention, and advising and mentorship. I wanted to share with you some action items. These are some things that we've accomplished thus far, working as we have since September of this past year, September of 2020. A little thing, but so important, we have begun renaming our current offerings, right? So we no longer say students are taking a music history class, if indeed what we're talking about is history of music within the Western European tradition. So we've begun to rename those courses that are already being offered. We now have a BIPOC music club, and those students are integral in our decision making as we go forward. We've developed 2 music department scholarships for BIPOC students. We've revamped the audition processes. When I first came to Western, I walked in and the choral auditions were students coming in to sing 2 European art songs. and I gasped. And over the course of that year, we had lots of really great conversations, especially with our voice faculty who may have been educated in that tradition and reluctant to let go of that tradition. But within the department now, we say the following: sing us a song. And we say, could you please show us some other way that you express your musicianship? So we've opened the doors, we hope, to students who may not have come through the kinds of educational systems that many of us came through on our paths to being music professors at the collegiate level. We have received a grant to update our ensemble libraries. We're going through, especially in the choral libraries, and culling the canon, removing pieces that we know now do not have texts or histories that we want to have within our department. And with the remainder of that money, we're making purchases of music by composers whose voices we need to amplify. One of our music theory professors is now taking a sabbatical project where he is collecting examples of musical excerpts to use in music theory courses that have nothing to do with the Western European tradition. We have started office hours for advising and mentorship of our BIPOC students. They've also completed a survey for us so we can take a good hard look at what our department is doing to serve or not serve all of our populations. We've added new courses in global music traditions, social justice, and revised one of the majors. We now have monthly town halls, monthly publications, and discussion boards for faculty. I am finding it very exciting to be working at this time where it is our students and our young people who are holding us accountable for the changes that must be made. And I know that I feel renewed energy to get up and do the work on behalf of the students. Even though I'm at the end of my career, in some ways I feel like I'm just beginning because I'm learning so much from them and they inspire me. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ahmed, who's going to talk to us a bit about the ACDA Diversity Initiative Committee, I think. Do I have that incorrect?
I'm actually not going to talk about that. I'd love to just echo a little bit of what Phillip especially talked about, because I love the fact that we are all sort of doing very closely related work, but using often different concepts and different strategies, but ultimately we are sort of working towards the same goals. So what I'd love to talk about, that initial question of the concept of ADEIBJS, you know, the acronym keeps getting longer and longer and longer. And in fact, it's something that we don't use in border crossing, even though the entire mission statement is centered around that. I'll often use these words with ACDA when we're talking about larger systemic things, but I found that they become sort of useless when you're trying to find actionable items that are about direct interpersonal relationship, because many of these concepts, in my opinion, were really originated in HR departments. They really originated in trying to make companies function better. So we get a sense where they are very organization-centered if they're not applied correctly. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the way we view these things in border crossing, and I view them in my own work. And you'll find that they intersect a lot with what we've been talking about, but maybe not. So here, I started border crossing about in late 2016, early 2017. And basically, in a nutshell, it's the story of it is I am I love choral music. I love singing choirs. I love classical European Western music. I love Bach. I love singing in a group. I find this music has so much to say and communicate. I just love it so much. But I felt a real disconnect between my cultural identities as Mexican American, as a Latinx, as a Mexican, with my cultural identity as Arab, as Middle Eastern, as Muslim, and with my cultural identity as an immigrant. I just found constant little things that made it not connect with what I did. And I would go to these concerts and participate and sing with groups and be an audience member and direct. And I constantly have this little voice in the back of my head saying, well, what if I brought my grandma here? What if I brought my best friend here? What would they get out of it? What would turn them off about it? So I wasn't really thinking about a big picture diversity or a big picture inclusion. I was really thinking about this specific person that I know and have a relationship with. What would turn them off about what we're doing? And the thing is, the way I have an advantage with border crossing is that, at least with our programming initially, we weren't really working toward a greater diversity. That came later. Initially, our first concerts and programs, it was about, I want to create a concert season, a program that really connects with the Latinx community in the west side of St. Paul. These people that I see so often, that I connect with, that I go to the stores with and see at church. But then you start to realize that a lot of the defaults in what we do are actually designed to connect with a certain person, but they're designed often to connect with a person that's white and cis and male usually a lot of the time. And so it became an issue of trying to identify what are those things that are bugging me about this and try to pinpoint actionable things that we could do to break those down. And we came up with 3, and this is how we program everything. So when we try to create a program in the West Side of St. Paul concert series, we think through these 3 things for that community. We're organizing a community sing in South Minneapolis. We're thinking about these 3 things for them. So what are these 3 things? They're, for us, they are relevance, representation, and access. And what basically means is relevance is, what am I getting out of this? What is this performance I am watching? What is this community sing I'm participating in? What is this bringing to my life? What am I getting from this? Am I enjoying it? Is it boring? Is it bland? Is it exciting? Is it teaching me something new? Is it telling me, is it making my life better in some way? And that's relevance. And then we start thinking, well, what do we do? If we're organizing a community sing west side of St. Paul for a primary Latinx audience, what we do? Well, we think about Latinx experience and try to tell a story that people are going to say, oh, I connect to that. Or we try to think about an organization or an event that's going on. We try to connect them to it, like, well, we should go to this thing. Or we try to drop some fact that people didn't even know about their own history or culture. We try to mobilize, so we're trying to give people actual things that bring something new to their life. And then we think access. So relevance is, what does this bring to me? Access is, how can I get to it? What is preventing me from getting to it? Because, you know, I would go to these concerts in Orchestra Hall. I remember going to this amazing concert and realizing, like, well, for someone else to come here, they would have to either pay take 2 buses, pay a $50 ticket, they get a babysitter. It's like, you know, or once they're here, I feel like I'm not even dressed the right way. So what makes something accessible? Well, yeah, time and place, how much you pay for it, but is it easy to follow? When you sit down, do you have to already have a sort of context to understand what's going on? Are people going to stare at you because you clapped the wrong way? Or because you brought a snack with you and you're not supposed to have a snack? Is there anything in that program that's going to feel familiar and welcoming to me? Am I going to know the other people there? Or is it going to happen somewhere that I'm familiar with? what's the vibe? Is it formal? Is it stuffy? Is it loose? Is it something where I'm encouraged to chat? All of these things add up. And finally, representation. So relevance is, what is this bringing me? And access is, how do I get myself to it? And representation is, how is what is going on representing me? How am I reflected in this whole thing? Because I have been to mind-blowing concerts of repertoire that was relevant to me that happened in a place that I could go to, but no one on stage was even remotely looked like me or had a name like mine or spoke like this is not, I'm not represented. So there's that thing there again. And for us, that means collaboration, research, recruitment, and context. Trying to find ways in which everything that's going on stage or in the event reflects the people that you want to target. But what I do want to emphasize is that this isn't, what makes this a little bit tricky to manage and difficult to do is that you can't really do this for everything in general. You can't, because every time you make a decision, you are discounting something else. If you're saying, well, I don't want to base my programming on a sight reading because I want to do a lot of music that's done by rote, you are making a decision to not do a certain type of music. If you say, I want to make this concert free for everyone, and I want people to bring their kids, then you are making a decision that you are okay with a certain level of noise and chaos in the place that might not be appropriate for other people or other communities. So at least for us with border crossing and with my work in general, it really starts with being really aware of those interpersonal connections and relationships that you're trying to address and then work towards that. Because diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, access, justice, best practices, all of these are huge, enormous, all-encompassing concepts that we're all working towards in our organizations and our lives. But it becomes so incredibly overwhelming and difficult if you try to, fix that with your specific work.
I think that's what I was feeling at Chorus America was the attended by a lot of people who are used to being implementers and feeling lost as to where to start. And so Tesfa's encouragement to start as a listener was powerful for me. Would you like to talk about access in the way you approach youth? I'm a retired elementary music teacher, so that's my thing. But as I learn more about church, perhaps a traditional place where a community sings together, perhaps being less available to our current society and our population. Ahmed, maybe were you able to do any of your class notes with MPRs for youth? And Angie, I thought about your founding leadership with communication, and Phillip, certainly your vocal essence singers of this age. Is that an okay segue as far as how we can open choral singing access to our youth? You all right with that? Ahmed, did you get to do any class notes projects virtually this year?
We haven't visited schools. We've been doing a lot of visits on Zoom. I'll typically do 2 or 3 visits a week. This week I'm visiting 3 classrooms, and I'll do different little lectures, or sometimes we'll record a video for the students. Students will send their questions and then we'll record our answers. Sometimes some other musicians come with me, but that's how we've been doing it.
Okay, thank you.
Phillip?
Thank you.
Yeah, similar with our witness program, Ahmed, we've done the same thing with our teaching artists, having them put together a series of videos to supplant the in-person experience. The beauty in that is whereas before we'd done a written guide, where the teachers are responsible for teaching the content and then the teaching artists would come in and do the workshop. Now we have Witness program, for those who don't know, celebrates the contributions of those from the African American community, the Black bodies in our community, to our shared heritage here. We have those voices now, those artists actually instructing the whole way through. So the beauty of it is you have a program that centers the Black experience being completely led by Black artists, which is a beautiful thing from beginning to end. I want to acknowledge one thing. There's a question in the chat about choral music, and that we will get to that question because there's a lot to that. I'm going to drop one of these. I have several key phrases that I come back to in these conversations. As one of them is that two things can be true at the same time. And so we're going to break that down in a little bit. I think it was Lori who asked that, so we're going to get to that. I'd like to share a 2-minute video, if I may, that will introduce you all to the work of the vocal essence singers of this age, because, you know, Ahmed, you could not be any more correct if you tried saying that relationship is the key. That's always the next place I go after I break down, drop the dime on all the definitions. Now let's talk about what that means. It's all about establishing relationship. That's the most important thing that we do. So I want to share this video and then I'll contextualize it with everyone from there. It's just better to let those who we are centering speak. So this is Isaiah. Oops. Hello. Zoom fail. Forgive me. Give me 1 second there. My apologies. I don't think I enabled the audio. So give me just 5 seconds there and now we'll be ready. That's what I get from coming from one Zoom room to another one. All right, here we are.
I want people everywhere to know SOTA and know what SOTA stands for, because SOTA stands for something that I believe the entire world can understand. SOTA stands for Singers of This Age, and this age is a new age that people like me, teenagers, are helping to build. My name is Isaiah Bates, and I've been in SOTA for about 3 years. I came to find out about SOTA one day during my freshman year of high school. I was in choir class, and my choir teacher actually told me to go get Phillip at the door. So I went out to go get Phillip, and when I heard that he was like a choir director, my first thought was that, you know, he was a white guy, kind of skinny, with a full head of hair. And then I got to the door and I saw him and I was like, oh, that's not what I thought at all. So I brought him to the choir classroom and he introduced the idea of the youth choir to us. And I was actually really excited about it because I thought it was going to be a wonderful way to develop my voice. So I took a shot and I auditioned.
Watching Isaiah grow in the SOTA program in the last few years has been amazing. He's wide open now, fearless, courageous, daring, creative. I mean, you name it, Isaiah has taken it, ate it up, and delivered a whole different sum of what he's taken in. And it's just like, that's my son. That's my baby boy, you know? And I can't be prouder. I can't be.
I've come to actually love my voice, coming from a place of not really being at the best terms with it, knowing that everybody's voice is different and mine is just my voice. You know, it's what makes me unique, and it's just another aspect of me that I've come to learn to grow with. Through SOTA, I've become more myself. I've been able to come out of my shell. Back in freshman year, I remember I was a shy kid. But now, through the people that have been in SOTA, I've been able to come out of my shell more and be more myself, which I think also bled through into my home life, where I'm not that ashamed to wear what I want to wear, or, you know, say the things that I want to say, or feel what I want to feel. I'm able to do that and not be judged.
I'm enjoying the ride. I really am. As a parent, I couldn't be prouder. I couldn't be.
So the reason I wanted to share that with you all is to let it speak from Isaiah's voice himself. I'm going to skip this one here. to show you when I started Singers of This Age, it evolved out of a doctoral project where all of my recitals involved community connections. Even the project I did with the Singers of This, with Singers in Accord, too many singers starting groups here, but the Singers in Accord had communication involved in it. That was something I've always been passionate about, but I didn't really know why. I couldn't articulate it until the end of 2016, middle of 2016, 2017, when I was like, what am I really trying to do here? And what I wanted to do is to find a space where we could eliminate barriers. So I started thinking, what keeps the choir from looking like the community? One of the barriers is cost. Can we create something where everyone is on a level playing field? Can we create something where transportation is not an option, not an issue? If you want to do it, we'll get you there. Where representation, you hear that synergy with what Ahmed said earlier, where they see themselves in the people they perform with and in the music they perform. If we can do these four things, I think we can create a choir that looks like the Twin Cities. And it's from these four principles that we created the Singers of This Age, which now beginning of the end of year 4, moving into year 5 here, still is completely free of costs. Transportation's fully provided, meals provided. We perform with artists who look like the young people, and we sing repertoire from, the Middle Ages, medieval period through now in a variety of genres and styles with the appropriate technique that supports that. So it's getting at that question Lori was asking earlier. Well, do we have to throw out the old stuff? No, but here's the deal. I'm only going to sing something from the Renaissance period if it can connect to these young people today. So last year we sang the Echo Song because we could connect that and about conversation and about inner voices in our head to Mendelssohn's Heilig, which is all about the angels singing holy, 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 to Dikokele Bawo, which is a South African prayer and community. And those three became a set that we talked about and we had transformative conversation about to apply it to their lives. And this is the framework within which we work. By singing together, we explore our personal artistry first. This is the change for me working with youth now. We sing together to explore their individual personal artistry. You heard Isaiah's dad talking about Isaiah coming out of his shell. That leads to conversations that we might not have been able to have before, which then leads to collaborative creation. And so that is how young people in my sphere are beginning to change the shape of choral music, because we have a program premiering on Saturday. I'll stop sharing my screen now, where 6 of the 7 pieces involve creations by the singers. Either they wrote solo verses, they wrote harmony, they wrote the piece together as a whole. It's a way to get them completely involved in the message of what they're singing so that it is theirs. They're not singing my program, they're singing their program. And that's, I think, the key to working with young people now is that, as Angie was saying earlier, your students are holding you accountable there. My young people are teaching me more and more every day about how to engage and affirm how they want to show up in the world. And that's the beauty of Isaiah. He is now, we're going to be working next year in a gap year to help him prepare to take auditions on stage, theater, movies. This is a kid who barely would open his mouth year 1. Now I can't tell you how many spoken word and original rap pieces he's written, and what a lovely baritone voice he has, and the skills that he's developed by being in this community together. So part of what we'll get to later from my perspective is, what's the purpose of what we do? If we're singing some beautiful Bach, which I love me some Bach too, how do we apply that to our lives today so that it has relevance, to go back to Ahmed's word? I've talked too long. Angie, it's your turn.
I just wonder how Angie is preparing her music ed majors for this landscape. Wow.
It's the most exciting job. First, can I just comment quickly on how exciting it is for me, Phillip, to hear everything that's going on with SOTA and to think about community youth choirs for the past 40 years, you know, from the time they started popping up all over in the 80s, and the core values of what those choir organizations were like then and now how they served youth then compared to the kinds of choirs like yours and John Alston's and others that are popping up that have a different focus, that's so much about student empowerment and student creation and student voice and student leadership and students becoming the most fully present, developed musicians and human beings as can be. And that's really exciting work. And the fact that you're able to do that and still remove barriers, hooray. I know there's a lot of conversation too, not only around community children's choirs in general and our missions, but the whole idea of this honor choir experience that our professional organizations have done. And what should those experiences look like? And who should participate? And what barriers are put up that prevent all students from participating? And I'm hoping that there can be a lot of evolution quickly around that category of youth choral activities, because it's been slow to change and people are waking up to that. Just to say a minute about what Jan was talking about, it is so exciting to try to put together curriculum and experiences to help today's 18 and through 22-year-olds get ready to go out into the public and private schools and do what we just heard through Phillip's program, do that in their own school setting. And what tools do they need and what conversations do we need to have, right? And so developing that curriculum now compared to when I taught these classes even 10 years ago are completely different. In the choral methods classes that I'm taking now, that I'm teaching now, everything we do, everything we say, everything I have them read is through a DIA perspective, right? According to these modules. These modules reflect philosophies. For example, number one, all community members deserve the opportunity to sing in an ensemble, and our choristers need to see themselves represented in our values, our pedagogy, and our repertoire. And then we have some really heated conversations about traditional choral structures and select ensembles and audition procedures and competitions and whether or not any of those traditional practices practice exclusion. And if so, what can these young educators do when they get out into the field to change that? We talk a lot about what skills are appropriate for 21st century choral musicians. What beyond reading staff notation and having a bel canto sound are appropriate for today's choral students? And what are best pedagogical practices to reach those things? We talk about, in module number 3, the Western European model of podium-driven ensemble music making is not indicative of US culture and current best practices in education. So how do we educate students to go out and empower the students they're going to have? And then, you know, one of the other things that's changed so much are the readings and the materials that we use in class. So gone are those days, you know, where we had textbooks on choral methods, because there's no way they can be current enough. And these are the pressing issues for today's up and coming music educators. So we read from World Music Pedagogy, and we read articles like Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Access, What's the Holdup? And we read articles about our transgender students and voice placement and access based on gender and sexuality, and tenor bass choirs versus soprano alto choirs versus mixed choirs, and the myriad issues that these students are going to have before them, and the opportunities they're going to have to reshape the landscape. And as I tell them often, you know, we're developing lots of questions and we don't have all the answers yet, but boy, are the questions important. And we keep asking and keep asking, and we keep reflecting, and we keep questioning the way it's always been done as we're forging a path for something that's better for today's youth. And it's exciting to see what adult choirs are going to look like in 20 years when these students who are in Phillip's community choir grow up and are in choirs for adults. What are those expectations going to be, and how will we serve this population as they grow into adulthood? It's awfully exciting.
I loved especially seeing both what you, Angie, and Phillip are doing, because I would like to just pose this idea to everyone that none of this is new. I mean, in a sense, we're all working towards, because in some part of our, in the back of our mind, or when we're doing our work, we know that there's something off by what we're doing. And a lot of the work that I did with Watercross, that came out of my doctoral work. And my doctoral work was basically about figure out, why do I feel left out of this field? Like, what's going on here? And try to pinpoint the reason. And I remember looking back through old issues of, music educator journals and choral journals, and whenever the question was posed, like, what needs to change in choral music, what needs to happen, inclusion, diversity, equity, social justice, these are things that you read about going back 50, 60, 70 years in these journals over and over and over again. And it's wonderful to see renewed push and movements and visibility as there are demographic shifts, in the general population. But these are not new concepts at all. And I remember two quotes that really stood out to me as I was reading were from, two people here in the Twin Cities who are central to choral music here, who are Phillip Burnell and Kathy Romy. And one of the quotes was from Phillip Burnell, and it was from about 50-something years ago, about why did he found vocal lessons. And it was because he thought that choirs were stuck in a rut and they were performing all the same things all the time. And Kathy's quote was from about 35 years ago, and it was, why did you found the Bridges program? And it was because she felt that there was all this exciting music making going on in her community, and she just felt so disconnected from it. And you see these two sentiments over and over again. This idea that homogeneity, that everyone's doing the same thing, everything sounds the same, we're just going in circles, chasing around. You go to a conference and you hear 15 choirs in a row performing the same stuff. And, the difference between one composer and another is that one of them has ninths and the other has a djembe. And Kathy's, is we feel disconnected. We feel that we're doing something that we love, but that we're a minority, that people are not going to connect to it, that there's so much other music making going on in churches, in clubs and the street, on concert halls that we're not a part of, and we wish we could be a part of it. And I think that at the root, those are the two things that just let us know, like, there's something that we should be doing differently. And I think that as I see Angie's work with her students and in world music, and Phil's work with SOTA, and my own work, it seems like we're all sort of circling around this concept that's sort of hard to grasp about, like, that I think is related to those two things. This idea that we're all, and that there's this, I don't want to call it blandness, but homogeneity and this disconnect. I don't know if you agree with that.
I agree with you, Ahmed. And what I would say, two thoughts to that. And it's funny, the two quotes, I knew exactly what you're going to say Phillip said, because I've heard it 100 times working for Phillip. It's played out differently now, right? The concept's the same, but now we're playing with it on different dimensions. So one thing that sticks with me for everyone to consider and sit with is we often select for difference, but then we develop for conformity. So we want the choir to look different, but when we get them in the room, we do the same things that we used to do. We train them the same way. We use the same ear train, the same music, right? That's part of that problem is we have this disconnect in our profession because it comes back to that diversity of we want to look different, but looking different is not enough. You know, so you got to care about your people. And this leads me to the second thing. What I'm finding more and more as someone who grew up as I call it a bipolar musician and in the loving way, because I'm also someone who struggles with that spectrum too, both in a real and present way. I grew up in a gospel tradition, Negro spirituals, gospel music on the weekends, and then Western European music 6 days a week. That was my existence. And I would go back and forth between that and Bill Withers at home and that kind of stuff and the notated score. And what has struck me now, I finally am able to articulate it. Western European music operates from the premise that art and singing is a luxury. It's an accessory. And for the rest of the world, basically, music is food. It is an essential part of our existence. It is core to our DNA. And once we reconcile that, and then I think that's what you're getting at, Ahmed, and what we're doing, Angie, now is we are beginning to approach choir and the way we form choir as it's essential. And so everyone deserves a choir to sing in. And then how do we create that place so that the music they make is core to their existence and a part of their everyday being? We just finished literally this weekend recording a concert with a song. The whole concert's about affirming Black lives, our witness program. But the song is Say Her Name. She cannot be forgotten by us. Say his name. And we literally say the names Philando Castile, Jamar Clark, George Floyd. And wouldn't you know it that now it's already dated 2 days later. We just recorded that. And now there's another name. You know, that's a song that is essential to our DNA right now. And so to Lori's question earlier, can you hold that song side by side with a beautiful Sooner Will Be Done or an Ave Verum Corpus by Mozart? Absolutely, those two can be in concert together because we can tie a message that's essential to our life. And we're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. But we do need to call, and I'm going to kind of start to pivot a little bit here and push. We do need to get rid of some of the songs that we used to sing that do not affirm anything about our existence that we need to affirm anymore. And I'll start with one that, and I didn't know any better when I was a teenager. And I want to say this because as a Black man, people think we have it all together. I used to love me some Copeland Old American songs. And Ching-a-ring Chaw, I used to sing the heck out of that song. I could do the best Chaw, you know, because I didn't know any better at that time. And my teachers didn't know any better at that time. But now we know better. So we've got to start being a little more concerned about what are we putting in front of our students to sing or our singers to sing, and it's helping them to navigate the questions that come with that music. So I'm just going to put that out there and see where it goes.
I love that, Philip, and your description about Bach being able to exist alongside. And I love the word alongside, right? Because the old way of thinking, the old educational paradigm in choral music was nothing if it wasn't hierarchy, right? And this music is better than this music is better than this music. And like you and like Ahmed, I didn't see my music represented. I grew up with pop music. I played the organ and did boom chunk on with the piano and my pedal in left hand and was happy as a clam till I got to Indiana University and found out that music wasn't worthy, right? Mm-hmm. And that I should instead value this music and value this music more. And as you said, we're finding out that most of the world's cultures eat, live, and breathe music and music making and dance and movement. And most of those cultures do that, live it, breathe it, eat it, without writing down a stitch of notation on a staff. So where did this paradigm come from that says this is better than this, or this is more studied than this is? And in regards to the question in the chat, for me, thanks to Karen Howard, I love this analogy. We're pulling up more chairs to the table. We're not uninviting Bach. I'm not uninviting Monteverdi and Josquin and Brahms and some of my favorite composers of all time, right? And they satisfy part of my human experience, but it doesn't satisfy all of my human experience. And the more different kinds of music that I experience and that I learn and become a part of me, the more I realize I need a full life. I need a whole palette of musical experiences. And I believe that for our students too, in a non-hierarchical way.
I will say that Singers in Accord, our model, has opened up has given access to remarkably diverse experiences. And I am so thankful. And our goal is to sound different, to respond to the literature, to respond to our collaborating artists. It's been valuable for me to grow. And you're not at the end of your career, Angie, because I'm hoping I'm not at the end of mine. But advice, perhaps, for those of us that are in implementation mode, listen, reach toward our experts like you all. Any other wisdom before we have to finish this evening's conversation?
There's so many thoughts. And I Gloria, I see your question there. And this will kind of connect to that. One of the things that's starting, it was going to start this week, and then we pushed it back and fortuitously with all the events this week. But be on the lookout for an announcement from ACDA Minnesota, if you're in Minnesota. And then for our friends who are close by, you could also tune in via Zoom. The Twin Cities executive directors of our major choral organizations, we've been in conversation all year as well. They invited me in as an artistic leader to help facilitate these conversations. We are going to be hosting a set of conversations that I'm calling Building Up a New World. And it's based on new words to Jacob's Ladder. We are building up a new world. And the idea is to listen to and to invite in people that I have relationship with, or other artists that have relationship with singing artists outside of the choral canon, starting first with Black bodies in the Twin Cities. So these are singers, singer-songwriters, musicians, but they don't sing in choirs. They aren't engaged in the practice of making Western European choral music. Why are we going to talk to them? Because we want to know what life is like for them as a Black person in the Twin Cities, what their musical experiences are. And then we're going to get to the tough questions of, what do you think about choral music? When you hear choral music, what does that mean to you? What's missing? We often talk about, as we said, we want the choirs to look different. We want more people to come to Orchestra Hall, and those are wonderful sentiments to have. But we have to go about it differently by creating relationships and being willing to, and Angie, I love that Karen Howard thing of pulling up more chairs to the table. Well, in order for them to want to come to the table, we've got to be serving up a dish or a meal that's inviting, which means we might have to go about cooking that meal differently and invite different people to come together to shop for the ingredients and to cook the meal. So as choral organizations, we've got to start this by unpacking how we do business and what are the policies and procedures that we work with each and every day, and look at those and take a hard look at them in order for people to feel like they even want to come and sing with us. Because I'll just use Black community. Why would a Black singer want to come sing with me in Vocal Essence when they can sing with Gary Hines in the Sounds of Blackness? Unless they read music really well and they love Bach and Beethoven and they want to sing our stuff. If they want to sing with people who have similar experiences, it might be better for them to go there. Or Twin Cities, see what I'm saying? There's reasons why our choirs look the way that they do. And it's going to take a long, systematic approach for that to change. It's not a quick fix. And the minute we make it a quick fix is the minute that we set ourselves up for something that's not sustainable.
Sorry, my internet connection had a blip. I'm back.
We just thought you got tired of us.
No.
Angie, did you want to jump in and then you'll catch up, Ahmed? We were just kind of giving some advice here and thoughts there.
Yeah, I love the fact, Phillip, that you're getting opinions from people who aren't necessarily in the choirs right now, right? As part of Washington ACDA, we also are doing work around these issues. And we're bringing in Ariane Harley Emerson, who's the head of the ACDA Diversity Initiative. And we want to know these things, like, why isn't Washington ACDA more diverse? Why don't we have more voices represented, blah, blah, blah. And the first thing Ariane said to us is, go ask people who are not in the organization, right? Mm-hmm. That the answers don't come from a bunch of us sitting around saying, well, this is what we think, being members of the organization. So I think that's such an important point. You know, we don't have the answers, or else things would look different. So let's go out and find the folks who can help us figure out the answers.
I think I'm getting a sense of what the question was. And I this is something I want to talk about. So, okay, I'm gonna just talk a little bit about how border crossing evolved over time, because so when I wanted to start it, I said, well, I want to start a choir of Mexican immigrants. Let's do this. That did not happen, especially with the music I wanted to program. And the fact that I was I was singing with groups in town that had no other Mexican immigrants singing there. Where am I going to get my singers from, and my audience from, and my money from? And I'm at the U of M in the choral program. That's not going to happen. The first program we performed in 2017, there were 16 people on stage. 2 of us identified as Latinx. That was it. And my board had 4 people, my unofficial board. It was me and 3 people who do not identify as Latinx. That was just how it is. And over the first 3 or 4 concerts, that was our demographic. And I got pushback from my Latinx community. It's like, well, it's just another white choir doing Latinx music. This summer, we're recording our first album of contemporary Latinx music. There are 20 performers. Of those 20, 12 identify as Latinx. 3 others identify as people of color, but not necessarily Latinx. My board has 9 people on it, and 6 of us identify as Latinx. And that took 5 years of just really constant work. And Angie said it really well. The way it happened was, we did a concert at Our Lady of Guadalupe Church. We started to see some audience members that were there very often, or that were donating. We reached out to them. We started to figure out, hey, how can we participate in this thing that's going on in the neighborhood? And then those people became our board members. And then those people put us in touch with singers who wanted to be a part of what we were doing. And then once you reach a critical mass, we were stuck at like 4 Latinx singers. All of a sudden we jumped to 7. And then from 7 we jumped to 15. And it's because of, but it takes a really sustained effort. But the other thing I think it sustains that we don't realize, it takes a real awareness of what your own culture is as a white choir. Because often I'll see this sentiment from choirs I visit or talk with about these issues. Well, we're nothing. We're all just white, and that's not true. I would push back and say that Singers in a Chord, just knowing the people in Singers in a Chord, that many of you have family members, co-workers, friends, neighbors who do not identify as white cis males. There is a great diversity in your existing relationships. And there's a great diversity, not only in those relationships, but in your own backgrounds, in your own spouses and grandparents and aunts and families. And I think that it involves this outward work of making the organization deliberately more inclusive, but it also involves a real sustained effort in getting to know yourselves and embracing those parts of us that we've been sort of taught to look down on or gatekeep away from, as Angie was saying. I think that is a really important piece.
This could be a years-long class. I would sign up. It certainly should be a pillar of our choral music organizations and a lifelong goal. And on behalf of all of us who've been able to listen to you three fabulous folks, we are grateful to have your leadership, your examples, your passion, and we hope to hear more from you soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you, Angie and Ahmed. And don't be afraid to talk about race, friends. It's polite. It is the thing we need to do. Let's do it respectfully and learn from each other and support each other.
Thank you all. Dan, did you want to say anything on behalf of Singers in a Chord before we say goodbye to these and see you again soon, to these friends?
Only that, again, I want to thank the panelists, and also we'll be posting this, the recording of this webinar on our YouTube page. And so if you've enjoyed this session, tell people about it and they can view it and enjoy it as well.
Thank you. And can I say, I just looked at the attendees. It's nice to see so many Gophers out there. Russell, Adrian, it's nice that we meet this way again. Sam, Grace, some of our classmates at the U.
All fabulous folks. Thank you again, everyone. Stay safe and well. Good night.